Hey now folks, my name is Nick from Board Game Brawl, and today we are taking a look at BattleCON, Devastation of Indines. I think that's how you're supposed to properly pronounce that. Now, this game was on Kickstarter. It was a huge hit, and it's actually the follow-up to the original BattleCON War of Indines, or Indines. And it's basically, this game is meant to simulate every cool anime-themed fighting game that you've ever heard of or played. But it's got its own universe instead of characters. This is from Level 99 Games and Brad Talton, who uses the same universe for all the different games. There's another game I'm very much looking forward to called Argent the Consortium. There's games called Pixel Tactics with the same characters from the BattleCON games, all in this tightly wound universe. Now, what I need to point out that's most important about Devastation of Indines is that War of Indines came in a very small box. And while there was a lot of different fighters you could choose from in there, there really wasn't a lot to the game. I mean, it was a very simple game, but not a knock against the game. I liked it a lot. That's why I got Devastation and backed it gleefully. But there wasn't a ton of stuff there. As you saw from that huge box, there was a lot of stuff, at least in the Kickstarter edition, the extended edition, I should say, of this game. A lot of different things, a lot of different play modes, a lot of different options for your characters, including different standees and just extra variants. There's a whole RPG mode you can go through. So even though the core gameplay of this is similar to War of Indines, there's just so many more options in this box. Extra characters, so many characters. I'm telling you all this so that you know that when I give you the overview, I am going to blow through it very quickly and just show you some of the new stuff and tell you about the base gameplay of Devastation and of BattleCON in general, because this video would be over an hour long if I went through every single way to play this game and every single bit that comes in this box. But hopefully you see enough that you can make your own opinion about the game and whether it interests you or not. So let's go to that overview, then we'll come back and I'll tell you my final opinion of all of this. Alright, I'm just going to give a quick overview of Devastation because there's a lot of things to keep track of, there's a lot of details to the core gameplay, and there's a lot of stuff that comes with the extended edition and Kickstarter exclusives of the game. I'm not going to cover every single thing, but I'm just going to give you a broad overview of the game. There's a lot of different fighters in the box, and we're going to focus on Eligor here as one of the characters that I'm going to give you an example for the core game, and Shektor. Now, some of the examples of the other fighters that come in the game, we have Enderbit, we have Eric Russell, we've got Agena Callista, we've got Byron Crane. There's just a lot of different varied fighters. Each of them has their own unique powers and abilities. There are some Kickstarter exclusive fighters, including Legacy and the Freedom 5 from the Sentinels of the Multiverse game. You have Iris, who's like some webcomic person, and also Mark PTO, also, I don't know, webcomic cartoon, something or other. There's just a lot of different fighters, over 30 in the base game, plus you can fully compatible with War of Indines characters and all kinds of other promotional characters as well. So each player is going to choose a different fighter. In this case, we've got Eligor and Shektor. You'll take one of these life dials that starts at 20. You'll take this beat counter, which starts at 15. If this beat counter ever runs out during a match, whoever has the highest life points wins at that point. Otherwise, you're just trying to knock your opponent down to 0. The first person to do that wins the match, and it's best 2 out of 3 matches. Now, every player has their character card, which has their setup on the other side. In this case, both Eligor and Shektor are going to take Vengeance and Malice tokens, respectively. Shektor can spend her Malice tokens to get higher priority. Eligor can spend his Vengeance tokens to get stun immunity and protect himself, but they're both limited to 5. You then have a reference card which tells you all the different styles and things that you have, just in case you don't want to look at all of them, especially since some of them will be disabled. You each get a different character standee, which is you're going to move around on the battle map here, back and forth. You have a finisher, which you can only use when you're at 7 or lower life, which is a very powerful special attack. Each player will decide which side of the finisher they're going to use at the beginning and show their opponent. And there's always public information in this game. You can always look at your opponent's available bases and styles. And then you have your bases and your styles. Now, each player has the same 6 common bases: dash, grasp, drive, strike, shot, and burst. But they also have a base that is unique to them. So, for instance, for Eligor, who's the person I'm going to use for an example of how to play. We have Aegis, which is unique only to him. And then he has all of his different styles, which are also unique to each character. So each character is completely different and has a lot of different special abilities and variabilities with them. So when you get down to the actual gameplay, both players are going to first disable 2 sets of pairs and bases. There's recommendations for what you should do based on these little numbers that are down here in the corner of the card. But if you're an experienced player, you can just choose whatever 2 pairs of bases and styles you want to be disabled. You'll get those back eventually, but it just means that you can't use them right away. Then each player is going to pick a pair, a style, and a base, and put it down in front of them. And that determines what once you lock that in, that's what you're going to be using to fight your opponent with. Your opponent will do the same. Then you get to the anti-phase where you can actually use anti-abilities, like using these vengeance tokens, or Schecter using her malice tokens. Once both players have gone back and forth, putting as many tokens as they want onto their characters, that phase will end. Then you flip over your style and your base. Now, there's a lot of different things on these cards, but basically these 3 stats are the same on both cards, and you're going to add them together. Range will determine how far you can attack, so if you have a range of 0, the person would have to be in your space, which I don't technically think is possible, but might be possible with certain character combinations. But if you have a range of 1, that means you can attack a character that is right next to you. If it's higher than that, so if I have a range of 2, I can attack someone 2 out, 3, and so on and so forth. Now the next one is power. If you successfully hit your opponent, which is very dependent on the number of special abilities down here, how much power you deal, you add the power from the 2 cards, and that's how much damage you're going to deal to your opponent. If you successfully deal damage to an opponent and you are the first one acting in the turn and they don't have any kind of stun guard or stun immunity, you can stun them. If they're acting second and you stun them, they don't get their turn. It goes on to the next beat. Priority is the speed in which who you determine who gets to act first. Add up the priority on the 2 cards. Whoever has a higher number gets to get off their attack first. And then all the stuff down in the box are different special abilities which are going to be unique to every style. So for instance, Vengeful says, Stun Guard 3, Elgor endures all movement applied to him by opponents during this beat. Before you activate it, you get to move forward 1 space. Advance is always towards your opponent. And on a hit, you gain 2 Vengeance tokens. Now, if I had paired, now what happens next depends on what I paired that with. If I paired it with a Grasp, all of my different numbers would increase by those amounts. And on a hit, I get to move the opponent a space. If I had paired it with a Strike, it gives me Stun Guard plus 5. If I had paired it with a Dash, I can never hit my opponent, but I get to get very fast priority and move like potentially past my opponent. So lots of different things you can do. You'll flip those over, resolve them, determine how damage goes, determine who's stunned, and then you're going to recycle cards. So you'll pick the 2 base style and base that you had put here before, take those back into your hand, they're now available to you, move the other set down, the 2 that you just used are going to go there, then it goes to the next beat. You'll move the dial down and you'll continue doing this. You're going to keep doing this, playing pairs of styles and bases, recycling them, using special abilities until one opponent is either knocked out, the beat counter reaches 0, and then whoever has the highest life points. And like I said, it's a best of 3 matches. That's just a very general overview of BattleCON. Like I said, every fighter in the game is completely different, so you're never going to play the same game of BattleCON twice if you're using different fighters, but you might want to use the same fighter over and over again just to get experience with them. Now let's go through some of the different other extra stuff that comes in the game. Now, something that carried over from War of Indines but is now in a bigger fashion are the arena cards. Now, these are just like different special areas that are going to affect the gameplay. These are all double-sided. You'll start on one side and go through the special effects. So, for instance, Volton Industry says, place a flame jet marker at the center of the board. A player who moves into the marker space takes a damage. If you're standing on it during the recycle step, you take 2 damage. And then you turn this card over when a player would move off the edge of the board due to an opponent's effect. Then you have to flip this card over and all these other effects happen. So using a 9-space board, you put the furnace marker at the far left of the board. Basically just more and more extra stuff happens. And some other examples of these, we have the Helm Mekit. These are all like different worlds and arenas. You've got Ponderosa Village, which looks like, sounds like Ponderosa Village, and it's some sort of like Asian festival village. You've got the Japatis Outpost, which goes around like that. You've got Xanthine City, and then it goes into the Treetops. So there's a lot of different arenas that can add some variability to the game. The other mode of play, or another example of a mode of play, is boss mode. In boss mode, you're actually going to go either 2-on-1 or 3-on-1. One player is a boss who moves around the board with one of these giant minis and is trying to take out the other two players using the same rules of the standard BattleCON, with, of course, some exceptions. You have a bunch of different of these boss tokens, which only apply to whatever certain boss you happen to be using. And just to show you the pictures of some of them, she's actually one of the fighters in the game, but this is when she's in her giant mecha golem and is fighting the other players. You have this dragon guy who I think is like Larimore, and then this other guy who's called Chaos. And of course, in the extended edition, there are different little standees for all the different types of stuff that you have. So in this case, you have Chibi one. So there's the Chibi boss monster for that, and the Chibi boss monster for the dragon, and the Chibi Chaos guy. There's other different variant modes you can do as well, including tag team. Like I mentioned before, you can do Almighty and EX fighters, which is different pairs of bases. Just a lot of different modes. You also have a mode of play called Battle Quest, which can be either single player or multiplayer, or there's different solo challenges as well. You're going to go through this book and follow all these different adventures. Again, the gameplay is exactly like normal Devastation, but only certain fighters can be used. There's actually, like an RPG, there's a shop you can go to buy stuff. You have special coin cards that you can use to purchase different stuff that you earn during your adventure. And it's just another way to play the game that's completely different. It uses the same tactics and rules as the base game, but in a way is almost completely different. And as I mentioned before with the bosses, there's a lot of extra stuff in this game, and there's actually different alternate art standees for pretty much every character in the game. Some of them are just sort of the normal standees. Actually, I think this is an alternate art one. So there's like two different serious quote-unquote artworks for every character. The normal one and then the alternate art one. Just as some of the examples. This was actually a fan-made character as part of the Kickstarter, but as part of the normal game now. And then you have chibi art for every single character, if that's your thing. Little wolf girl there. All kinds of different character standees, if you're so inclined. You just have that option. It doesn't have any gameplay effect, but it's just something you can do. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to like the pixel art, especially people that like Level 99's other game, Pixel Tactics. This is probably the exact same pixel art from that game. There's just all kinds of different stuff that you can do. I have an entire bag of all the standees. That's how much stuff comes in this game. That's how much they threw in here. Just extra stuff that doesn't have any gameplay meaning, but can just pimp out your own personal game however you want. There's a lot more I didn't get to, different play modes, but that is, in a very large nutshell, BattleCON Devastation of Indines. Okay, I'm going to make this very, very simple. I am amazed at the amount of content, and not just any content, good quality content that Level 99 Games managed to fit into this box. Even as big as this box is, it really doesn't do justice to how much replayability and variability you can get out of this game in all of its different modes. Now, I'm going to tell you that I only dabbled in some of the other modes. I played a couple of the solo campaigns of Battle Quest, really fun. I played the boss mode a couple times with some other players, really fun. I did not do any of the Almighty or EX cards because that just seemed like whatever. I mean, I'm not really interested in having like super duper ultimate characters when the base characters are fine just as it is. I mean, it doesn't change the game to me in any kind of meaningful way. So I wasn't really interested in that. I didn't really do the tag team stuff or any of that, but that just goes to show you. I try to do very thorough reviews and try a game in a lot of different ways if I can, and there's just too much here. There's just so much to go through. I don't think that there is such a thing as too much. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck in this box. And now, I should say this. If you already like the original BattleCON, War of Indines, you don't need to watch the rest of this. You just buy this. I mean, if you like that game a lot, this is more and more of everything that you loved about that game, but just expanded upon in just such great and fantastic ways, even including the artwork and the components and the board. The number of different fighters. The number of different fighters is just amazing. I mean, it's there. You will never play the same game twice, and you're gonna want to play every single fighter, every Kickstarter character, even the silly ones, even if it looks like it's got a weird power. They're all so different, and you will want to, if you like the game, you will want to try them all out. And it is going to take you a long time to go through that roster of fighters. So if you already like BattleCON, this is everything that you loved and then some. If you've never played BattleCON before, then I would caution you, just because this is a game that is unlike a lot of the other modern board games that are out there. And even though when you see it being played, you're like, oh, that looks like a CCG or an LCG. No. This game is really supposed to simulate a fighting combat match, either from whether it's a video game that you're looking for as inspiration for how this game plays, or just a karate movie, or whatever it is. And why I say that is because the gameplay is very deterministic. Now, there's always luck involved in a game. People that say, I like luckless games, are ridiculous, because there's always some sort of random variable factor. Even in chess, there's the variability of the type of mindset that your opponent is in, and things you just can't account for. But in this game, it is very close to being all about skill. It's very dependent on you knowing what your character can do that you're choosing to play and what your opponent can do. The more information you have in this game, the better. And that's why you're always allowed, before you actually set your cards down, you're always allowed to look at what your opponent has in their hand and what their capabilities are, so that you can play the appropriate card against it. And knowing that, okay, I play these 2 cards now, they're not going to recharge for another couple rounds, that's critical. That requires a lot of strategic planning. So this game will appeal to people that want fast, very strategic, thinky games. And it can be brain-burning. It really can, because every match just feels momentous, at least to me. And it's very competitive. It can get very heated and very stressful, because you're just trying, But at the same time, even though every move is so critical, you can make comebacks. I've seen a lot of dramatic comebacks in this game, where you're out and you're down on the ropes, but if you can just figure out what your opponent is trying to do, get into their pattern and their rhythm of what their character is doing, and account for that, you can come back. There are a lot of comebacks in this game, and that's what I like. It doesn't feel swingy. I think that would be the wrong word for it, but it's all about experience. It's about being experienced with your fighters, being experienced with the gameplay, and working it all out, and that's fantastic. I can imagine that some people will not like this because some people won't like that there isn't a more random chance. A lot of people like battles with dice because it adds that randomness that is probably more realistic to combat. But I think this works really well. It's going to appeal to anime and manga fans. It's going to appeal to fighting game fans. I mean, the artwork is just fantastic across the board. They use a few different artists, especially for the exclusive Kickstarter characters, but it's all really good. All the character design and artwork is laid out very well. It's very simple to determine what a character does. The rules are very simple. The rulebook is really cool because it has like this cool little the chibi characters talking back and forth, describing how to play the game, and that works really well. But even if you just read off the regular base rules, it's very simple to figure out what to do. All the other modes are laid out very simply as well. Component quality is high. In the extended edition, there's tons of extra bits and standees for different characters, alternate artwork. You can have your normal artwork that looks like a more realistic depiction of the characters, I guess. You can have the chibi version. You can have the pixelated version. There's boss standees that just look awesome. The board look awesome. The arena cards are really cool. The arenas work really well and add. The first few times that I played this, the person I was playing with at the time said, I don't know, I feel like this game just needs a little something more, a little more randomness, and that's what those arena cards are there for, and they work really, really well. I haven't played with every single one yet, but I want to. I mean, I want to play with a different one every time, and that's really cool variability to the game. Like I said before, I dabbled with the Battle Quest mode, and that's cool. I'm not that into solo games, so I don't think it appeals to me too much, but I haven't played it with multiple players. There's different scenarios for solo and multiplayer. I want to try those multiplayer ones. It seems really interesting, while the core gameplay is still the BattleCON system. The boss mode is awesome. I love one versus all games, and especially when you're playing one big beefed up boss. I haven't played with every boss, but again, it's fun to just have, feel like you have this ultimate power, but the other team, you can do I think it's 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 1. We only did 2 versus 1, but just knowing that you have to team up, and I mean, that's just so cool, and it's a lot of fun. It makes it feel more like almost like a party game in a sense. So there's just so much in this box. You get a lot of value. I've played games that are much more expensive than this that just don't have as much game there. And you really can't go wrong. I don't think it's for everyone. I won't make that kind of blanket statement like I will with some games. I definitely wouldn't even necessarily call it a gateway game, even though it is sort of simple. But if you know someone that likes competitive card games, especially for 2 players, people that like fighting games for video games, I mean, this could be the gateway game to make a video gamer come over to board games. I don't know. Definitely something to check out. I am really enjoying everything that Level 99 is having to offer lately. And I really hope they keep it up, and I hope they continue to support this game. I really think that they will. There's just a lot of interesting things here, and I'm really glad whenever anyone can sort of turn board games and genre status norms on their head and offer something different. So check it out. My name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.